I hit the go.
Let's boom that thing.
You're gonna make it sound like it cuts off. Like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Oh, okay.
We've wrapped that up. Don't worry.
What's going on with my video? Yeah. Sound.
All right. Here we go. All right. Hello. I'll type it in the chat. And this is the awkward period where I'm just gonna wait for a second. As in theory, people, come on in. I am multitasking.
So this is like the version of like when you're doing a live panel, like at a festival, and the two are at the front testing the mic and kind of chitter chattering and making sure our waters are full, and crowds coming in and they're like, am I at the right panel? And then they realize, no, this isn't the Pokemon panel, and disappear. I did a panel at this giant convention in Seattle, Emerald City, and we had this huge room and it was great. There's tons of people. And I was like, wow, so many people came. And someone's like, yeah, they all came in early for the Honan Vazquez panel. That's
that happened to me in San Diego. I went to see Tatsumi at San Diego years and years ago. And I was like, there's a lot of people here to see him. And it turned out, because I was parking, I thought it'd be busy, that it was just everyone was there for a Legion of Superheroes 50th anniversary panel. And then they immediately left and there were 4 people remaining.
Yeah, depressor.
All right.
I have done my fair share of awkward panels at mainstream shows in town, where it's like me and a really interesting guest that they somehow brought to the show, and like 2 people. I was like, all right, we're just gonna look at each other and talk the whole time.
Which is probably a very good interview.
I really enjoyed it. But it was so weird too, because the room was also being used for like, they would do these like nerd dating, like fast dating things. I don't know what they're called. I'm old. I don't know what dating is anymore.
While you were interviewing.
Why?
While you were interviewing.
Well, it was a local mainstream show, and they had like a really good alternative guest, and it was Pete Bagg. He was in town. I'm like, awesome. I love Pete Bagg, and I'm going to go and interview him at the show. But the same room, like at other times, it would be like very counter type things. And so like we'd go in and it would just be like this rush of like young people looking to date each other awkwardly.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's been my 5-minute preamble to allow people to arrive. Not that I'm like, I love hearing about this, but I feel like that's probably a little off topic.
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. If you are watching, thank you later if you watch at a later time. It's the wonderful world of the internet. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Welcome to BD BC, part of the Vancouver Comic Art Festival programming. My name is Jared Evans Sampson. I am the festival director here at VanCaf. I'm just here to do a little spiel and preamble, and then I will be in the chat. So if you have any questions for Antoine, you can put them in the chat and I'll bring them to the panel. We do want to thank, we have so many great sponsors. I do particularly want to thank right now the Alliance Française Vancouver and the Consulate General of France in Vancouver for all their support in our programming. I also want to thank Breakdown Press for all their support in getting this organized, and also the UBC School of Creative Writing for helping co-sponsor this panel. We also want to take a second to acknowledge the festival, the Vancouver Comic Art Festival, and our organization's activities are organized and take place on the stolen unceded territories of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam peoples, and that we as a settler organization have a responsibility that goes beyond acknowledgement to platform support, pay, and put forward Indigenous creators within our community. And it's something we're dedicated to and strengthening our ties within the community here at the Comics Festival. And if you ever have any questions for anything we're doing or input, I'm always open, willing to take them. You can find me at Jarrett, Jarrett at vancaf.com. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to go away. I'm going to become a blank screen, silently watching and judging, and pass it over to Executive Director Robin McConnell and Antoine Cossé. And thank you so much, both of you, for taking your time being here. Here I go.
All right. Thank you, Jarrett, for the lovely introduction. So as Jarrett mentioned, I'm the executive director here for the Vancouver Comic Art Association, which is the society behind the Vancouver Comic Art Festival, which is not just a festival. We're a whole bunch of different year-round programming, and part of that is this wonderful week of focus on French language and French creator comics. This is kind of a first time for us, and I'm super excited that we've been able to bring together so much stuff. Thank you, Jarek, for all the hard work and dedication. And I don't get the chance often to jump into the interview seat. It's been a while. And so my apologies in advance to our guest today, Antoine Cossé, who his new book is coming out in February from Fantagraphics, Metax, as well. Recently, last year in the prime early days of the pandemic, Palace #1 from Breakdown, who has a lot of work by Antoine. I think like 95% of your stuff is from Breakdown.
Yeah, pretty much. I've done one book with Retrofit as well, and one book with Colorama, and that's it. Colorama Print.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is all Breakdown. Yeah.
Now, in the preparedness for interviews, I always sit down and read an artist's work, read everything I have my hands on. And it's always interesting in that process to see kind of like the stages of the artist. And we last talked for the podcast I used to do called Ink Studs back in 2015. And both of us have no recollection other than it was a good conversation. A lot has happened in the last couple of years, but it was really fun for me to kind of revisit your work and see it in a different way, because when we talked originally, mainly I was aware of Mutiny Bay, Herald, and Nwai or NWAI from Breakdown. I'll point out these books that I have here. These ones I have physical copies of. And so at that point I had like a snapshot of who you were as an artist at that time, and then taking the time to look at everything now and seeing kind of where that's come to and kind of what the last 6 years have brought you to creatively. And it's interesting because I see Mutiny Bay, one of your earlier works, in a lot of ways disconnected from the rest of your work.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a little bit, yeah, I think the two last books are a bit more wild, not wild, but like a bit less. Well, there's no real, I mean, there's the story is like no historical, so I didn't have anything to attach myself to. I guess like Mutiny Bay was attached to something historical, so I guess that's why he felt so different from the rest.
Yeah, I mean, all your work kind of tends to share this isolation and this of the characters, which Mutiny Bay obviously has, as people mutiny and stuck on an island in the Caribbean, and the reality of being on a boat for a long time, and your futuristic work, people kind of in the dystopian. But it definitely feels like when I'm reading the work, there's such a through line from, there was a J1137, which I think is like the earliest book from Breakdown.
Yeah, it's the first one they put out.
Yeah, and there's like such a direct through line from that to what we see currently with Metax, that's coming out in the spring. And I wonder, is there a consciousness to this? Or kind of what's that organic process of like kind of finding that way, going on this path?
No, it's not. It hasn't been conscious. But that also goes hand in hand with like trying to experiment the graphical aspect of it, I guess. And also like I did like this historic book, and then I was like, I think I'm ready to do without the crouch, if you know what I mean, like, and just do my own stories. I mean, not that Mutiny Bay wasn't my own story, but it was based on a fact, basically. So yeah, I think that's what it is. But I've been thinking about doing something historical now, so maybe that's it. I went wild for too long. Now I'm gonna real world.
I mean, Mutiny Bay based on fact, but I mean, it's about for me, it's about the the pieces, the story you're telling in there is not something that you can get from historical narratives as much as like this is kind of the story you're telling in this setting, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like I took like a really tiny piece of that story and I kind of blew it. So yeah, it's I took, obviously you do take loads of liberties on what really happens, but yeah, I guess yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about, because like I really want to get into the kind of modern dystopian futuristic, and I was thinking about we're doing this over Zoom. It's the pandemic. We're kind of in a setting, and how much working on Maytax where it still feels like it's in this narrative that you've been working on, but it also feels very, very prescient and very of right now.
Yeah, because he was. So I've started it a while back, like maybe like 2 years and a half ago, maybe, and then I finished it like last June. So it was like really just the last bit of work where you finish the book and stuff. It's like proper, like it was in full on pandemic basically. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to read it like maybe a bit later on, like when this will be over. There's probably some things that will jump out of the page, like, oh yeah, it's totally pandemic-y. But yeah, it's full on from which yeah, I thought about it while I was doing it. I was like, oh, I hope. And also like some part of the story, I like there is stuff that I thought about, but way before the pandemic. So that was kind of weird as well. Like there's an illness going on in the book, and that was before even the pandemic started. So it was, it's really weird. I was like, oh wow. And in the Palace one that came out just like a week in the pandemic as well, there's like a whole there's a 20-page story about the plague, and someone sounds like like yeah.
I saw that. I was like, oh,
it was really weird. I was like, oh, okay. And also the character that speaks has a bit of a stance, it's like, okay, whatever, just keep going. Which was done not at all, like, so it's I think it must have influenced it, but I don't know how. And I think, but I definitely, while I was doing it, I was like, well, this mess will definitely influence it. But I let it go. I was like, okay, well.
I think one of the things that stands out for me, and especially like conceptually speaking, coming out in that time, is, and it's beautiful how you do it, because it's, you're really utilizing the medium in terms of what your limitations are, and then where you can push in a different way, and that's the kind of use of color, and how that kind of shows a type of isolation with the lack of color and that lack of presence. And I'm interested about how that, and then when we like think concurrently with the pandemic, and like we're really in this isolation place.
Yeah, you're right. I've never really thought about the isolation thing, but of course, it's like, it is like, and also like that's, the colorful bit, Metax, for example, is the last bit I did. So it must have been, and it was kind of like we're coming out of it, really. No, we're still in it, obviously, full on, but it was it felt like the hardest bit, because we had like a full lockdown, and I have kids, so like we were like all in a flat, and so when I wasn't working on money jobs, I was doing comics, but it was always on, in like a really short, so like we'd go out because they didn't have school, so I was doing the afternoon, my wife was doing the mornings, and then maybe I would find like an hour, 2 hours window. And then towards the end of the pandemic, that's when I did the colorful bit, which is quite dark in the comic, but like the colorful was like, whoa, you know. So maybe there's something about coming out of that isolation somehow with the color.
Yeah, just like a little bit of a glimmer of something to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that big cloud at the end, like I do actually remember drawing it and feeling quite liberated by it. But it's quite interesting. It's like I mean, they're like, it's always like quite physical, isn't it? The comics, they're like, there's a lot of movement, and so when something comes out of a in the air or something, maybe that's that was definitely the end of a quite special time, like quite a weird time.
And that book is a big undertaking too, because it's what, almost 300 pages.
Yeah.
And so it's like the sum of all your other works.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. It's gonna be like quite chunky object. It didn't really feel like that long when I was doing it, but then towards the end, when you start going through all the pages, I was like, oh yeah, Jesus, that's a big book. Which, hey, Eric, by the way, it's 300 pages. Good news.
The pitch
It's in
change.
color. Yeah, it's the biggest book I've done. But that one was quite organic to do. Like, he was really like I don't know, all, I guess, for everybody, when you work on the book, it goes up and down and stuff like that. But that one really felt like I really fought with it. I don't know. Yeah, it was definitely an undertaking of some kind. I'm glad I've done it. I'm glad I've finished with it. I can't read it anymore. It's like, and now I'm doing the French translation for so it's gonna come out with Cornelius in next year. And so I had to come back to it. I'm like, oh, Jesus, like just doing like 300 pages again. Yeah.
And that's interesting. So you're writing it in English.
Yeah. So that one, like actually all my books, I wrote them in English. Yeah, it's very, very strange. And then sometimes when I translate it in French, I feel like, oh God, this is not. I don't know. I feel like it's not good at all. I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Do you feel like, because it sounds to me when you're kind of done a work, you kind of want to just put it away.
Yeah.
And it's that piece sits there not to be refiddled with. Is that kind of within your process too? Like some artists will, go over pages again and again. Where with you, I'm feeling it's much more immediate.
Yeah, there's no, like, generally, if I don't like some people like work a lot on pages and redo them like endlessly. It sounds a bit pretentious, but I just chuck the page, or don't chuck it, but I just put it away and I just redo it. But yeah, I don't spend a lot of time. I mean, some pages I will spend a lot of time, but I always have like a few pages on the go. So I just, it's all very quick. Yeah.
Are the pages
building the story is very long? Like that process is long and hard. But the actual, if I've, like, for example, this took a long time because just of the story. If I had the story all in one go, like ready to go, it would take me 2 months. But it's just because, just because of the narrative side of it that it takes so long. I think it's for a lot of people like that, I feel. Maybe not, I don't know.
Do you have, like, in terms of your process, is it like a narrative that's in your head and then you're just kind of doing chapters along the way and it kind of mutates with that as the process is going and it unfolds?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So I've got like parts and then I go through them and so generally I've got the beginning of the end and the end. But this one, I remember I started quite a lot at the beginning. So I had like a different idea of how it was going to go. And then I have loads of like tiny, actually I might just find one. I've got loads of tiny Bristols.
Like index card size?
Yeah. It's like all of the, so I kind of repeat to myself the story endless endlessly. And I so there's number 1, number 2, number 3, and then this changes all the time. Till at one point I've got like 4 dots, and that makes sense, and I'm happy with it. And I go this while I'm doing the first bit of the story. So it's quite weird.
It's I mean, it's not unheard of. I think
no, yeah, of course. I mean, it's not,
yeah, like I think Santoro might do something similar, only with probably more graphs and spirals and stuff. But I think he would do
triangles.
Yeah, the golden ratio of Frank Santoro. Yeah, and I know, like, which is interesting to me because your art feels very immediate. And so, like, there's something where I'm fascinated where what would your roughs look like? Kind of what is rough for you, and how does that change when you're in the process? Because like your pages, I look at them and they're very fluid. Like,
yeah. So I like, well, the fluidity is because at the end for ages I have like the block of pages, which at the moment, for example, I've got those here. So they all sit there. Like this, for example. So I've got a pile here, and then I go through them like to see if the rhythm works. So
okay.
Leslie. And then when I'm happy with how it flows, like if I can read it, I don't know if but it's mine. It's just my rhythm, so it's really strange. I'm always surprised that like people can follow it because it's just in my head, and it's just like you go through the pages, and if it works, I'm like, okay, that's it. And I stop, and I'm happy with how he goes. Yeah.
I think one of the things that really succeeds with your work is how you give it space to breathe as well. Like you're pushing it through there, and you're kind of like looking at the stories that flowing, but you're not like putting a ton at once. Like each scene kind of has that room to move through and tell a story, and not just be like jump into the next thing.
Yeah, cool. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
I wonder if that's something that comes through that process of like making sure you're seeing how this works.
Yeah, definitely. And it works in chapters. So I'm doing that one, but I'm like, no, that's too. Yeah, don't really know how to explain it. But yeah, it feels chunky, or it feels like it doesn't flow to the next chapter. So and then I've scanned everything. And this is the really hard moment because you spend so many hours just scanning everything, and then after that there's a lot of changes because obviously then from suddenly looking at it physically, you're just doing it like you're scrolling on your screen.
Yeah.
And I don't really have I'm not very good at InDesign or something, so it's very DIY. It's almost like single pages, but in my head I know the doubles, so I know how it works. But sometimes it's like a total surprise. So I would do it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's good, that works. But I had no idea that it was gonna work. Apart from the double pages, that are like actually, yeah, the double pages are like the body of the book, because that's how I on the computer that's how I like kind of like set everything from there, because otherwise it doesn't work. So then suddenly I've got a bit of space in one bit, and I'm like, okay, well, I can add 2 or 3 pages, and then it's just so long. It's just such a long thing, and it's so bad. It's comics is insane, and then I send it to people for read. So my wife does a lot of that. I gave her the book to read, and she's like very honest. She's like, no, that doesn't work. I don't understand that. And then friends, the same thing. And then you add pages. But yeah, the space thing is, I don't know. I'm very glad it works. I have no idea. When I finish it, it feels good to me. So I'm like, okay, that's done. And if there's, but that's very good. Yeah, that's super. If there's a bit of space, I like it.
Yeah.
The comics are not like that, so it's kind of strange, but yeah, great.
Visually, the work in there and the work in a lot of your work is kind of evokes a lot of brutalist architecture, and I'm interested if in your interest in that, that kind of post-Soviet republic. We actually have a lot of brutalist stuff in Vancouver as well. Weirdly,
Oh, nice.
it's our one of our universities here, Simon Fraser University, is actually like a brutalist institution on top of a mountain that's supposed to be this like center of learning, but it's like oppressively concrete.
Great. Brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like it. I really, I mean, it sounds, but I really like, yeah, I do like architecture. I've got an interest in it. So I've got loads of books. And I work a lot from pictures. So I've got loads of architecture books at home and I check them and I draw. But yeah, the brutalist buildings, they're great. I'm not very good at names and stuff, but like architects that I like, but yeah, I do check a lot of random. Yeah, generally, if I they're based on, yeah, they're based on books generally.
Yeah, there's like
Not necessarily stuff that I saw in real life, basically.
and
Although
I think
I guess London is quite a weird city. It's quite chunky. It's not like Paris or European cities. It's pretty, yeah, it's pretty stark. It's like, you know, grey and
yeah.
not everywhere, but the center.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also so many in very industrial towns not far from there, or industrial
Yeah,
city.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But I do like the aesthetic. Yeah, I love the aesthetic of it.
You're talking a little bit about drawing and sketching, and I'm curious about that process of like, because you do a lot, you post on your Tumblr a lot of sketch drawings and sketchbooks as part of your process, and kind of where does that weave in with the comics work, like in terms of working out these visual ideas? Because your stuff is very visual, you know, it's coming from somewhere, and so it's like getting to that point to get to doing this weird Stark building.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a totally different exercise. The comic is like, the comic work is like really, I really respect it somehow. So I like, there's a lot of care in it. There's not a lot of impulse, I guess. Like, you know, it's what I thought about. It's about the stuff in sketchbook is it's like I just doodle on holiday or when I just like that when I can. When I wait for stuff and it's the same. I mean, it's the same because I draw a bit. Sometimes I saw a nice picture and I'm like, oh, okay. But it's yeah. It's not the same process at all. It's just, I mean, obviously it's sketches, and the sketches for the comics are very different from the ones I put on the gram, like, you know, the little doodles. I feel a bit weird about posting them on Instagram, but yeah, it's very it comes. I mean, I like doing them. It's a nice. It's very relaxing. I just don't really think about anything, and I just do them.
Yeah, it's that immediacy, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and just the opposite of what you have to do with comics. I mean, me anyway. So you've got a big project with, like, you know, it's hard to change things, and I guess this, but it's like illustration work. You know, I don't really have to think about the story because somebody gave me the story. So it's
You're
like
in a
that.
moment.
Yeah, exactly. Do it. It's all like, yeah, it's all the balancing. It's nice.
I do have an illustration-based question.
Yep.
And thank you for sending questions and sending them over to me. You seem to do a lot of illustration work. Do you find that disruptive to your personal work, or do you enjoy the constraints of these kinds of assignments? It's all still beautiful.
Um, yeah. I like illustration. I wasn't I mean, like, I'm a fan of comics, so I love comics. I think it's the best thing. So I just like doing it, but it just pays nothing compared to illustration and stuff like that, which doesn't pay a lot either, but it's still better. Anyway, but yeah, I really like it. You know, you get first of all, you work with people, so it's nice. You know, they give you a brief, you just give it, and there's a lot of different jobs as well. It's quite interesting. It changes quite a lot, and it's a nice way also to kind of experiment a bit on the style. Although I always like,
I've heard some interesting thoughts. Like there's so many different viewpoints on illustration where like someone like Seth, he is so dislocated from his illustration work. Like he does not see that as the same him.
No, yeah, I'm exactly the same. I don't see it as valuable work. I mean, I don't see it as a body of work, which is which is not true because there's quite a lot of them now. But I don't value it the same at all. I really respect illustrators. It's not that, but it's just for me. I don't know. Yeah.
But it sounds to me like you get something out of it though, within kind of like pushing something that's not as familiar.
Exactly. I really like doing it, and but I'm always surprised that people ask me to do it, and when there's a bigger gig, it's great. You know, I'm like, oh, it's better and stuff. But it's not the same exercise at all. It's not the same length. Although, like most of cartoonists just are illustrators, basically. So it's a weird thing, isn't it? We all focus on the comics, when in reality we like illustrators, basically. That's what we are. You know, like that's how we make money, and you know, but somehow we focus on the, I don't know.
Yeah. I have an emailed question. Is there an approach or decision-making project you bring towards color for your work? You seem to employ a lot of different styles and approaches, and I was curious about it.
For the color, I always try to do something different for each book. So I use different. So I did quite a bit of pencil, like for Palace One. I started a story with loads of pencil, but I ruined my shoulder with it. So I was like,
oh wow,
let's take it easy. Because when you do like tiny, like repetitive things. Anyway, so I do different things. So like the first, well, actually, Mutiny Bay and Metax is quite similar. It's like watercolor with on the page. But now I'm trying to, so every book I try to experiment a little bit. Try to change it. A short time actually, there was no color.
I know here, I don't know if my camera shows up on the feed, but there's stuff like interesting stuff like in that where
in Noir I did. But for Noir, for example, I use the color as the time thing. So I thought the colorful bits were like the past.
Oh, so it's kind of like the do you ever read Here?
Yes, I've read it after actually. I didn't really know.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Richard McGuire. Yeah, I'd heard of him, but I'd never really read Here, and now I did. And it's amazing.
Richard McGuire's a fascinating guy. His band, Liquid, awesome. I was gonna say, check out Liquid. Like the he does the bass line that's used on oh my god, what's the song? Jarrett's gonna get mad at me for not being.
Oh yeah, he's a musician, isn't
he? Yeah, he does the bass line that's on oh my god, Jarrett, put in the chat. What is it? I can't remember.
He did loads of stuff as well. He did like loads of children books apparently.
Yeah. He has like a weird little book that's like this big of like non sequitur drawings for the New Yorker. Wow. It's fascinating. White Lines by Grandmaster Flash and Mel.
Oh wow, not him.
So they sampled his bass line from a Liquid track.
No way.
Yeah. So
strong.
I did try to interview him and he dodged me. So
no offense.
That's
Thanks,
okay.
Rich. Next time.
I did have something to kind of bounce off of in terms of the color piece. Well, I guess like one thing I'm thinking about is kind of your ink wash process. And it when I look at it, and I don't know if this has ever been part of your process, is I see it in kind of like with the black and white, it reminds me of still screening,
Mm.
where you do this layer thing,
Yeah.
and it's a completely different effect with what you do with your color work.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
And I did that, I did that a long time. It's like no idea how to do. I mean, I did a bit in college, but I still wasn't very like the guys at Breakdown are like really good. They're really into Rizzo and stuff. But maybe watching them, like I started to think a bit like that. So like I've started another project where I would do watercolor on one page and scan it and then do it on the top and then get rid of bits. And I realized that I'm starting to do that. So I'm starting to do exactly like a print. So you're starting to get rid of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Layers. So that kind of like hit me. I was like, okay, so but yeah, that's true. The color stuff started because they were doing Rizzo. So they were like, we can't do too much colors. So you have to do 3 colors basically. And then that's how I started to do it. And then he must have gone on the black and white stuff as well. But yeah, that's interesting for the black and white stuff. What do you mean? Like with the
So it's like don't really have a good example here. Like when you do silk screen printing, sometimes you'll do like one pass of a color, and then you'll have a different thing, and you'll do another pass of the same color, but it won't be in the same image. Like you'll just where those colors overlap, it's just that color's heavier or more saturated.
yeah.
And so that's where I was thinking about sometimes with the black and white stuff that you do. I see like you do like these like dark shapes and then attached not as dark, and it really struck me in that kind of same way of how things work in these layered ways, and maybe that's part of the ink process.
Like, yes, yeah, exactly. So the way I do a page is I start with pencil, and it's very slow. So I go like pencil, then pen, then the blacks, and then you're right, it's totally layered. And then I do one pass of ink wash, and then I add some more, and I add some more, and so I make some bits stand out a bit more. Yeah. So maybe that's true. It's like
a layered process.
Tech explanation.
Yeah, I am also fascinated about how, like you're mentioning earlier, from doing pencil crayon, about how that physically is hard. Yeah. I watched a documentary on Lorenzo Matodi where he was doing these pastels, and it's just like you see these giant arm muscles, and he's just like doing these colors. And it's like it's so intense, and I'm like, how does he do that? And so I'm fascinated that, like,
yeah, it's very
how
physical.
tools affect in a way.
You have to work out basically. If you do like if you do giant like oil paint like stuff, you gotta do your morning mix, like otherwise you're gonna break stuff. I went like I was like blocked like that for like 4 days, and I've never had anything before. It's my back, and it's only because I spent like 3 days. It wasn't even that long. I spent 4 days doing crayons like that. Oh yeah, that looks good. And I was like, oh yeah, and I couldn't move. So yeah, maybe I'm getting old as well. But it's all these things combined. Yeah, it's very physical, I think. Not the A4 ink wash. That's very gentle on the muscles. But the big, Matoti he has to has to pump up.
Yeah, it kind of like made sense to me. Like, oh yeah, that there's something about that intensity in that work, and
yeah,
it's
there's like and when stuff it's more there's more texture to it, it starts to get more physical. But it's like it's a real and how you compose the image and the dynamic of it, you'll see everything. So you have to just it's just a literary trace of you.
Yeah, but I mean, there's something also, it process is interesting. I love process.
It's very interesting.
Jarrett raised up the 5 minutes sign. I guess for me, I'm wondering, so new book out in the fall or in the spring or kind of winter, spring in February, given hopefully without too many service disruptions with boats getting stuck in channels and things. It's where we're at now,
isn't it?
You said you finished that last June. Was it last year? Or no, this year, June?
This June.
Okay, just like 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Are you kind of percolating new work in your mind, or do you kind of need a break after a book?
No, I mean, because I always have like 2 or 3 books at the same time. Like,
okay.
I mean, they're not like books, but they're just pages that I do. Because I get really bored. It's actually indispensable, otherwise I'd just go mad. So I was doing Metax, but then I started like other projects on the go. So I just have to, but it's like when one is finished, it's like, oh fuck. So I have to just get serious about one of them. So I've got like 2 going. But yeah, I need to finish them now. I mean, it's very long. It's going to take me another couple of years.
Does that mean we're going to see a Palace number 2?
Yeah, I'd love to. Because I've done quite a few short stories in the meantime. So I think there will be one, definitely. And then I was thinking of doing like a collection of short stories as well. But maybe I'll wait for to have more. Yeah.
There was something in that story you mentioned earlier, the plague-based story, where there were frames or panels that reminded me of paintings. And I wonder if that was something I was seeing or something I was projecting. And wondering if that was something you do with your work, where you bring in a particular static image as an influence for composing that panel.
Yeah, so that one I was watching a lot of Goya. So I had like this book of Goya that I was watching, all of his etchings, and so I literally copied, and I've got that, and I've got a tiny book of a Bruegel as well that I could be reading. This one is amazing. And so I've got this mad old kind of like
Jesus,
the book that's so great. And then you've got little details as well, which is the best. So he makes the ripping off of Bruegel very easy because there's loads of zoom.
Oh my god,
it's so cool. So there's like all of these, and so I'm eating them like that one. So
yeah.
But there's that, you see like all the movements and stuff like that. So I was trying to pick up a bit on that. And I'm doing a book now where it's like kind of like full on this. It's a medieval story, like. But the problem is I did all of this book with like plague in it, and now it's like I started also that one. I went into a weird phase where I was obsessed with pandemics, and there's literally a pandemic happened, and I was like, oh, okay.
You're manifesting.
Yeah, and obviously none of it prepared me for it. It was useless.
Well, I think at this point we're all pretty comfortable with the pandemic process.
Yeah, it's crazy
for it to be done.
That's mad. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Not I. Thank you, Antoine, for joining us today. It's been really great to catch up, and
yeah, it was so cool.
A delight to read your work, and just kind of
thanks,
I miss getting into artist work like that, and so thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Should do Inkster again. Everybody's talking about. You're a legend.
we'll do.
Sure, you should. It's like podcast world at the moment as well. So
it's so weird.
It's so weird. What do you feel about it? Because you were like you were one of the guys that were like just doing that like years ago, basically.
Well, you know what's funny?
Doing it, and not everybody on Earth is doing it.
when I started, it wasn't even meant to necessarily be a podcast. It was a college radio
Yeah, yeah.
show. And like someone had a radio show at the station and she moved to Montreal and there's
Yeah.
a slot there. And I was like at a point in my time where I was like going to university at an older age. I'm like, sure, this will be something. And that happened to be, I think, at a time where comics was going through a huge seismic shift as well, where it was like Kramer started coming out and all this stuff. So I just think it was right time, right place.
Nice.
Yeah, but I do enjoy doing the interviews and thank you for appreciating it.
Nice. Pleasure.
So folks, you can check out more programming at vancaf.com and I think youtube.com/vancaf. And I appreciate everyone coming and checking things out.